It's Chris, host of The Heart of the Story. Welcome to the show. Yo, welcome to another episode of the program. Got a special guest in the building, Dallas McGee.
Yes, sir.
What's up, my friend? How's life?
Life's good. Life's good.
Yeah?
Playing.
Dude, so your son is named,
Figuring it out.
your new baby's named Relic. And that's the name of your business, right? As well?
House of Relics. Yep.
Was that intentional? I'm guessing it was very intentional.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we had him, and then we're like, what if we name it House of Relics? Which makes sense because we're doing an antique store, so.
Yeah. What was the inspiration to that new business?
My wife's been collecting antiques since I've known her. And I guess I kind of do too. Like, I have my grandpa's wedding ring, a necklace from my dad and stuff like that. So, just made sense. Just something that we wanted to do. We've been doing the dread business for the last 7-8 years. And it just made sense to they kind of go hand in hand, kind of more like sister companies. So it's definitely just made sense. It's like, cool, well, let's figure out how to fund it and go get some antiques and bring them home and, help others to find some dope antiques. It's hard to find European antiques in Utah or even like the US anyways. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, like, true Italian antiques are not something you're just going to find on the streets in Utah.
No. No. Some of the pieces we're bringing back are a couple hundred years older than our country. So
That's so wild. So you guys were just in Italy. Was that why you went? Was to source stuff? Oh, okay.
Yep. That was the main reason. Did a little bit of tourism a few days after, but yeah, we spent 4 or 5 days at the world's largest antique fair and still didn't even get to all the booths. 7,000 vendors at that place.
Wild.
Yeah.
How old is your oldest piece of, like, furniture?
1500.
1800s. What the heck?
From the 16th century. So
That's wild.
early 1500s. We bought this table that came from a monastery in northern Italy. So it was a dinner table for who knows how long, 400 or 500 years.
Dude, that's the thing. Ever since I've known you, so for the viewers, I've known Dallas for 8 years now. Dude's into the coolest stuff. Always does the coolest stuff. You're always been the entrepreneur founder type, but you've never done the just cookie cutter founder stuff. You're always going to try to find what's the off the bat beaten path founder stuff.
Yep. I had a friend who also is founder entrepreneur type, and I remember in the early days, he looks at me and he's like, dude, no one knows what they're doing. Your parents don't know what they're doing. Your church leaders don't know what they're doing. Like, everyone's just figuring it out. We're all living for the first time.
Yeah.
It's like, it kind of takes a lot of stress off of it. So, yeah, we're definitely not the cookie cutter entrepreneurs, whatever that means, definitely didn't take the typical run your own health insurance, life insurance, typical sales, outbound type,
Yeah.
But it works. We enjoy it. We kind of decided what kind of lifestyle we wanted to have and then built a business around that.
Dude, that's an interesting way of doing business. But honestly, it really is what you should do. I mean, I've learned the lesson the hard way through various iterations. Really, entrepreneur is more of a mindset. not an actual job title. It's really more of a mindset. Like everyone should really be an entrepreneur in every facet of their life, right? It's more of like, you have the mindset of being able to change and pivot and go with the flow and create rather than consume and be stuck, right? But as a, and then the job title of being like a founder or a business owner really should be something that only comes out of what's natural or necessity to your life, right? If you're building a business that, if you've got an actual need in your life that you want to solve or fix or be a part of, and a business happens to come out of it, then go for it. But if not, don't force it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, because for like with Dreadful Hippie, it was like when I first met my wife, it was more of a side hustle type deal.
Yeah.
Like she also didn't have a full time job, but she also only did Dreadful Hippie a few hours a week. And so um, by the time we were married, it had kind of gotten to a point where it could be her full time deal. And then that was when I kind of stepped in and was like, okay, well, like, I'll quit my job and let's figure out the sales and customer service and stuff because my wife doesn't like doing customer service type stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I'm like, well, I am like good at it, so let me try that. Um, anyways, but like from there, it's like, okay, we don't want this to be a typical job. We don't want to have to go into the salon every single day. So for the longest time, it was like, okay, cool, let's just make it a goal to get content or post content at least once a day, you know,
Yeah.
but make it good content. So we were very deliberate. Is that the word? Just very focused on what we actually like wanted to do. And so we'd go out into the mountains and plan a perfect photo shoot or whatever. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, we like going into the mountains. We like camping. We like doing this. We like traveling. So we built the business around those things instead of we could have very easily been like, well, we're a hair extension band, therefore we're going to spend all of our days in a salon, you know, but wanted that lifestyle more than anything.
Yeah. Well, you have to make it, it has to fit who you are. I mean, and, you know, authenticity is one of those things that you can't fake. That's literally what it means. Authenticity is, you're not faking it. You're just being 100% you. And
Mm-hmm.
authenticity is kind of the make or break for, honestly, I feel like, attraction and success.
Yep.
If you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Agree.
so what's kind of, you guys are making a pivot now. What's kind of caused that pivot?
I mean, based off going off of what you just said right before,
Yeah.
it like we've been running the dread business for, you know, I've been helping her run it for. I mean, was helping her make dreads when we were dating, so 6.5 years, you know, and she's been doing it for 7.5, 8 years. Um, but just the last couple of years, it just has kind of felt like we've been trying to hold on to who we were 5 years ago. Like who we were authentically 5 years ago is not who we are authentically now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've changed a lot. We're parents. We've gotten screwed over in business. We've had success in business. We've had people try to do a hostile takeover on our business. Just like all these different things where it's like, all right, well, if this is the stress that comes along with it, like maybe we do need to make some kind of shift, you know. So we've been working on getting Ellie to not be the face of the brand for a little bit. So we've hired a marketing girl. She's been helping a ton, doing photo shoots, planning photo shoots, and we help more behind the scenes, which at the end of the day is what we've been wanting the last few years, anyways. So just kind of having that, like, just kind of, how would you even describe it? Like, just the more we go on day by day, it's like, okay, cool, maybe we are supposed to make some kind of shift. And it's not to end Dreadful Hippie completely, but maybe it's to end Ellie being the face of the brand. so that she can be a mom full time, which is really what she wants right now. So it's been a couple years where, well, it's been a year and a half where she like finally told me that she was ready to be a mom. And then, we got pregnant a few months later. So now it's been a year and a half since that first conversation. And that's kind of been like the shift slowly. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I want to be a mom full time. So let's figure out what that lifestyle change and business style change looks like and start working towards that. So that's kind of been the thing, because right now, authentically, she wants to be a mom, and I want to support her, be a husband and a father, supporting financially and all that stuff. So it's been a fun little change figuring it out, 'cause it's different than what our marriage has looked like in the past. So
Yeah, I mean, it's normal. That's life. As you grow and you
mm,
change, right? I mean, when you guys first met, how old were you guys? Pretty young, right?
yeah, she was 19. I was 22, maybe 23.
Yeah,
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 we
that sounds about
met
right.
in 2018. Yeah, I was 22 and she was 19.
So you guys are what, 26 and 28 now?
Yeah, I'm 29. She's
29,
26.
26, 29.
Crazy.
Life happens, man. It's beautiful how it just sort of changes and evolves with time.
Yep.
And so does she wanting to be not as much involved in business anymore?
She does. She does. She just doesn't want to have to be. Basically, she doesn't want the sales to have to be dependent on her.
Gotcha.
Like, and what I mean by that is like, okay, well, it's slow, so let me put my dreads in. Let's go do a few photo shoots and let me make a few stories and post a few TikToks, and then we'll get sales. It's like she'd rather, which I fully respect it, but would rather just, hey, let's hire someone out. Let's build a marketing team, because I'm done doing the marketing all by myself and having it all depend on me. It's like, what if I get sick? What if I do just want to be a mom full time? It's like, if that's the case, then how we're running the business right now is not aligned with that goal.
Dude, I absolutely love every aspect of what you're saying. Reason why is because I see how you guys are actually making the shift from solopreneur to business owner in a lot of ways, like big business owner. Like solopreneur is like the one man band shop where it's like
Yeah.
every single thing that happens within the business day in, day out kind of runs through the solopreneur rather
Yeah.
than the big business, like the big overarching business owner. I don't know the right term for it, but they allow for various aspects of the company to happen throughout the day without their direct involvement. They automate stuff.
Yeah. And marketing is something that we've wanted to do more and more anyways, like hire out more and more, like build a team. And we have an awesome in-house team now, which is really cool. Because we've always done the marketing. Like we've had employees for 5 years now, but no one's done the marketing except us. So we've done a little bit of the back end stuff and the marketing, but now it's strictly back end,
Dude,
kind of what you're saying.
I love it.
Which, yeah, and it feels good now that we're finally like in a place where it's like, okay, I can see the marketing team like paying off financially. It feels good. So
Dude, I love it. So let's
keep
back
it
it up
going.
to the beginning though, the early days. I always like to go to the early days. I mean, and you and me have done shows in the past, but for those who haven't, there's a different audience now. You're a Missouri boy.
Hmm.
What was life growing up in Missouri? How did you even get into this business mindset that you're in?
Um, my dad's been a business owner since I've had consciousness. He was, I was 3 when my dad started his own business. So he does hearing aids, and my mom's always been there helping her. So my parents, I don't even think my dad got his associate's degree, and my mom did, just in basic accounting classes or whatever. And so my parents have always been, in essence, like business partners. My mom will go in a few hours a week and like run my dad's books and stuff like that. But biggest thing for me is like I come from a very stable family, very good parents. I've definitely had a head start in life because of the family and support that I've had growing up. Um, so we weren't like, it's not like a silver spoon type deal or anything like that. I just had very supportive parents, and my dad's business always at least was able to put food on the table. You know, definitely had some rough years that I found out later on, but him and my mom never, talked about it at the dinner table. But the conversations I did have hearing growing up at the dinner table was like, hey, did you get any sales today? It's like, yeah, we got 2 sales, sold 1 hearing aid, sold 5 hearing aids. It was a really good day, really slow day, whatever. So I always grew up hearing how my dad's day went because he'd come home and my mom would have dinner waiting for him at home.
Mm.
Every day at 6, we'd be eating dinner as a family, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm the middle child of 7 kids. So my parents have always been supportive of all of our decisions. But my dad often, multiple times a year, I've heard it several times, probably hundreds of times, but he's always said, like, I'm my own boss. I'm a business owner because I like to be able to choose when I go to work, when I go on vacation. Um, I'm able to leave work early and go to your wrestling meets, your drumline competitions, whatever it is. So sometimes my dad would have appointments. I'd go a little bit later and we'd have dinner at 7 or something like that. But he works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, very traditional hours, but at the same time, he never worked a Saturday. Occasionally he'd have like, he calls it continuing education. I think he has to be a hearing instrument specialist, hearing aid person. So, anyways, yeah, that's what I grew up around. And so that was like my childhood, all throughout high school, all that stuff. And I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I went and served a mission in Bogota, Colombia, right after high school. So I was 19 years old, 19 through 21. I was living in Bogota, Colombia, as a missionary. And my older brother had gotten into entrepreneur, self-development books, stuff like that, which was kind of out of the norm. I mean, my dad would read books and stuff to help him with marketing and sales and stuff with his business, but my older brother basically summarized the 10X rule by Grant Cardone. I'm not a fan of like Grant Cardone himself. However, the principle of the 10X rule is a very good thing to live by, a very good principle to live by. But anyways, my brother summed up the 10X rule the last 6 months of my mission, and the last year of my mission, and it helped a ton. So, as a missionary, your goals are to teach lessons, teach the gospel, find new people to teach the gospel to, help them to live the gospel, all that stuff. So, long story short, came home, my brother gave me the book, the full book. I read it, and that's when I'm like, okay, well, sales is what I want to, get into. Like, I've never had a desire to go to college. I've tried it. I tried it 3 times when I was 21, 22. It just never felt right, and not because I'm lazy or anything like that. I'm just like, I am not supposed to be here. Every time I would try, it made sense to try again a couple more times, but a few weeks in, I'm like, I am not supposed to be here. Like, this is not for me. I'm supposed to get an education elsewhere. And that's just kind of something that I've been trying to do. So I like to go to networking conferences. I like to read books. I like to just get in the trenches, figure it out.
Yeah.
One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. But anyways, that's kind of my upbringing. Born and raised, Southwest Missouri, the Ozarks. I moved out to Utah a few months after I got home from the mission. Met Mr. Christopher Big Time Franklin Schlierman III.
Dude, and we've always kind of resonated on a similar frequency. We've had some differences, but then we've always kind of gravitated back. We like distance away and then gravitate back from the with a similar belief on
Yeah.
education and entrepreneurship and life and all that stuff. Like, likewise, I never finished college either. I mean,
Mhm.
I tried it. I was trying it, and it was like I just kind of felt like it wasn't really meant for me. Same as you.
Mhm.
And like I just didn't. I have nothing against educate about like college education. I'm not like anti, if that makes sense, because I feel like
Mhm.
it's for some people it could work, right? Like depending on the career path you're going down, it could work. But I just feel like there's a rigid box that a lot of people, especially in the cis cultures that we grew up with, religious and stuff, like there's a rigid box of like there's just a cookie cutter path you're supposed to go down in life. And that's just
Mhm.
never really vibed with me. I feel like there's no such thing as a cookie cutter path for anybody. Everyone has to go down the path that is fit for them. You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%. And I mean, you and I kind of both felt the same way. Like you were the one who I connected with most at church in our neighborhood, because for the listeners, we went to church with a bunch of young single adults.
Yeah.
Everyone there was BYU student or and a small handful of UVU students, but they were all like, "Oh, I'm going to school for business management and stuff." And it's like, well, why don't you go
Start a business.
start a business? Why don't you go manage a business right now? Why do you have to go to school to do it? Like, why don't you just read a few books, figure it out, screw up a few times? Like, what's the goal there? Like, well, I want to graduate and work my way up the ladder. It's like, you can work your way up the ladder right now, but I don't know. It never made sense to me, but it makes sense for other people, and that's cool too.
Yeah, it's cool too. Yeah, a different strokes for different folks is it works. It's just likewise. I mean, I look at it, yeah, very similar lens to you. Um, do you think the fact though that I mean your raising was from the standpoint of you have an entrepreneur dad, but your dad still kind of simulated a 9 to 5 life.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel like that has kind of impacted you as you kind of gone through your life journey of yeah, I was an entrepreneur as a role model you're looking up to, but he still kind of simulated that 9 to 5 life, and you did grow up within a I'll just I'm just authentic, right? I'm just gonna say it for what it is. A very rigid mindset church culture, right? Of how
Mm-hmm.
people view career and work and life and stuff. Like how do you feel like that's kind of impacted you when you've gone into your own entrepreneur journey?
Well, I mean, bringing up the religious culture that we've been raised in, it's a very service based religion, right? And so the way I look at it is you and I don't mean this is just an example that I can throw out there. And I don't mean this to discredit any teachers or educators or anything like that, but like the way I look at it the way I look at it is like you could be a school teacher or you could be an entrepreneur and build hundreds of schools. Like which one has more impact? I don't know. Like I've had plenty of teachers, and again, this is just an example that I can think of off the top of my head. It's like I've had a ton of teachers that had a lot of impact on me, but you can also impact thousands of people more if you were to like build schools, you know.
Hmm.
And it's the entrepreneur that does do that, So again, not to discredit it, I have family and friends who are educators, school teachers. It's just the way that like I view service as an entrepreneur, right? It's
Yeah.
not about like myself, although it is good to take care of myself, you know?
Yeah. How do you
I
feel like
don't, I don't know
though?
if that was a correct answer, but
No, you're good. I mean, how do you feel like though about how your dad's example though, and of being because your dad didn't do it. Most people that I know of that kind of go the entrepreneur route, they're not able to simulate the 9 to 5 life.
mhm,
If you're following me, they're not really able to simulate the 9 to 5 life. It's a little bit like all hours of the day. It's
yeah,
risk it for the biscuit. Go
yeah,
for broke. but it seems like your dad was able to kind of simulate that 9 to 5 life, and then the church culture as well is kind of what I was getting at is, I mean, regardless if it's rigid or not, the real what I'm trying to be impeccable with the word on, it's more about the fact that it's kind of more of a traditionalist as well, where it's kind of like
Mm.
9 to 5, wife stays home, like so. Growing up in that kind of a culture, which is kind of opposite of your not your go for broke entrepreneur non-traditional lifestyle, how is that, how have you been able to kind of like morph those worlds, and how has the raising impacted you in your entrepreneur world? um yeah.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with my cousin Jordan. You know him a little bit,
Yeah.
but like me and him were best friends growing up. You know, we were cousins. He's a few months older than me, but he was a grade older than me. Anyways, grew up a mile apart from each other, so we were constantly longboarding, skateboarding, riding bikes to each other's house to hang out all growing up and stuff. But we've had the conversation where our great grandpa was a unioned lineman, right? So he like hung up all the electrical wires, all that stuff. And then our grandpa was a union bus driver. And then um, my uncle, Jordan's dad, has always been into real estate since he was 20 years old. He's been a real estate agent his entire adult career. And then my dad's been an entrepreneur since he was, you know, 30, I think. It's probably, whatever, early 30s. And then Jordan and I have very both non-traditional businesses. Like when we first had this conversation, like I'm over here doing dreads, we're traveling the world, getting content, going to music festivals, all this stuff. And Jordan's also like, he's kind of one of the first, like, kind of, I guess you could say, like content creators, you know. He, from a young age, picked up a camera and has been really good at it ever since.
Yeah.
Or at least has gotten better at it ever since. Not saying he was really good at it at first, it took several years. But, anyways, like, we both chose very non-traditional routes, and then we've had the conversation where it's like, okay, I wonder what our kids are going to be doing. Like, if it went from union workers to the next generation, are entrepreneurs but still very traditional entrepreneurs, to us being digital nomads or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
um so I don't know, I just think it's interesting. I don't know how much more like religion has played into it, other than the fact that like we come from a worldwide religion, um, that is able to spread the message of the gospel through social media and stuff like that. And so both of us have had very big impact using social media.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's less about the religion, more about the societal culture.
Yeah.
It's just I just find it really fascinating because it's like that evolution. I love how you broke that down. That like evolution change, because your dad and your uncle both, they were like, we're gonna go off and be entrepreneur types, but they both still found a way to kind of simulate that traditional 9 to 5
Yeah.
in a large aspect, which
Mm-hmm.
is in your typical people that you find out there that are quote unquote entrepreneurs, founder types. That's just simply not how it goes. It's typically more like 24/7 around the clock.
Yeah.
It's like kind of 24/7 around the clock. And I was just curious, like how that, and it within the church like that we grew up in, it's less about the religious aspect, more about the societal culture aspect. That traditional 9 to 5 is like heavily celebrated and encouraged, right? So
Yeah.
like how have you seen that fusion of that kind of a that kind of a lifestyle, and how that differs from the lifestyle that you're living? Have you found like clash, or have you been able to, how have you found the ability to kind of fuse them?
um i don't I don't know. I haven't noticed too much clash, but I also feel like I communicate well enough where, like, my calling at church is to hang out and support the 16 to 18-year-old young men, or I guess 15 to 18-year-old young men. So the sophomores, freshmen, high school age kids. But I gotta let them know, like, hey guys, I'm gonna be out of town for the next few weeks, so I won't see you until I see you. But I think for me growing up, I did. A lot of my local church leaders were very big into college, and they were big fans of BYU and all that stuff. But like, I never once in my life have had the desire to go and attend BYU. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily like a stick it to the man type deal, but I also know that like education was supposed to be something very big for me. But when I went and tried college, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't something that I was supposed to do. So one of the girls I dated before Ellie, and this is where this all kind of like in a fun way ties together, but like one of the girls I dated before Ellie was very big into getting a college education. And her parent, like her dad was my bishop and her mom was my seminary teacher. And those are the two, like, I was with them the most, because the bishop is always with the 16 to 18-year-old boys, and seminary teacher, we're there together learning every day at 6 a.m., Monday through Friday before school. So anyways, it's like that family was a very big college education based family, but it was always tough for me because it wasn't in my cards. Like it wasn't like as much as I pushed against it, the more it was clear and clear that I was not supposed to get a college education. So I don't like this isn't societal as a whole, but this is just my experience. It's like my leaders did push college a lot, but I knew I never wanted to go to college. I was never a straight A student. I wasn't a straight B student. I was more of a lower C student, to be honest. I graduated with like my GPA like 0.1 above the get out of here, you're past type level. And honestly, I kind of did that on purpose because I hated doing homework. I never did homework. I studied for one class one time, and that was because I had an F in that class anyway. So I ended up getting a D plus because of my final.
Yeah.
Anatomy and physiology. It almost killed me, but it's like I hated doing homework because it's like if I'm spending 8 hours a day in class, why do I have to spend 3 hours at home away from my family doing schoolwork? Especially because I was a wrestler on top of that. So I would leave my house at 5:45 in the morning to get to early morning seminary at 6. I'd leave there. School started at 8, 7:50, and then I'd go straight to wrestling practice. I wouldn't get home from wrestling practice till 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, and then I was supposed to do homework and eat dinner with my family and all this stuff. Like I hated it. So I'm like, I'm not like I made the decision in middle school to not do homework as long as I was like passing tests and stuff like that. I did fine on the tests, did all the in class schoolwork, but I never ever did homework. If I couldn't finish it in class, I wouldn't do it at home. So, and that's kind of, I don't know if that stems from my dad being like, when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm home type deal. I don't know, but I hated doing it. And so now when I'm home, I try not to do work stuff at home. That's why I do like having an office so that I can keep them separate. Having a store is really nice to go in and, get work done. But when I'm home, I'm here, I'm present, try to be present, try to get off my phone more, but I don't know if that.
No, the answer is no. Yeah, no, it's your truth. It's your authenticity. I love that. So, I mean, that's something I've noticed about you as well over the years. Is you're very much like. Again, I only bring it up because it's you. You do the founder life different than some other founders that I know, which I've always loved and respected, and that's always been interesting because so many other people that I know that are the founder life, including myself, even work life bleeds into home life. That's just kind of what I've observed, and it's observed about myself too. But you always had a really good job of like you're able to literally hold that boundary of the traditional like work time hours home life hours. You don't really let it bleed over, right? Like, and that's just, I've always respected the hell out of that. Honestly, it's not normal that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think it's a continuing process, but first 3 years of us doing Dreadful Hippie full time, we kind of had to learn that boundary because, I'd be on Facebook or we'd see an email come in on Sunday, like Sunday evenings, and we like Sundays are the days that we try not to do any work if at all possible. We do try to keep that the Lord's day and a day to spend time with family, but the first 3 years of us doing customer service and all this stuff, like we'd have a pissed off email come in at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon where it's like, hey, where are my dreads at? And it's like,
Yeah.
yo, like it's Sunday. Like, can you like chill or whatever? Like, I don't know. We'd get like super, it seemed like every other week we'd get some customer that was super pissed off that like at the time it made it seem like we had to respond to them right then and there. But and then we'd be like, hey, it's family day, we'll respond to you like tomorrow. And they're like, oh, you're so holier than thou. And it's like, holy crap, this is like really weird. And then so from there on out, it's like, it's not like no part of our business is a dire situation, you know, like houses aren't burning down or whatever. Like, I don't know. So it's like, okay, let's just unplug completely on Sundays. There's no email that we need to respond to on a Sunday. It doesn't matter. There's nothing that can wait till Monday morning. So,
Dude, which I love
yeah.
the heck out of that. Again, that's something that I've been having to learn a lot myself over the past little bit. That's a thing that I didn't really have that skill, to be honest. I'm
Mm-hmm.
straight with it up until the last, truthfully, the last year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've
Yep.
really learned that skill a lot. Um, so, yeah, no, I've really respected how you do that. The little thing that I always leave the show with, this is the concept of highlighting something. So, in regards to highlighting, I mean, we did a show or previous where you highlighted stewardship, and that freaking stuck in my brain all of last year. That like stuck in my brain heavy. It actually really helped me at a point in my life where just thinking about things from that lens really helped shape how I viewed life all of last
Mm-hmm.
year and how I viewed my relationship with my son. Truthfully, um,
Good.
we don't own anything. We really don't own anything, right? Like we are all stewards of stuff that's been given to us from the Creator that could easily be taken away, right? So, what's something that's on your mind now? Is it the same stuff, or is it you have something else that's been on your mind?
Man, I think it's still the same thing. You know how people kind of do word of the year type deal?
Yeah,
At least for now, I'm still stuck on stewardship. So that was probably a year ago that we last kind of did a short podcast. Probably about the same time last year, huh?
yeah,
But it's probably still stewardship. I think it's that same thing. You nailed it. You summarized everything that I always say about it.
yeah.
So I think, and one thing that's coming up too, and it's along the lines of stewardship, and maybe this is something that I did a podcast once with a buddy who I think he kind of stopped doing it. He moved on to something else, but for a few years he was doing this podcast called Returned or something like that. Basically, he would kind of, long story short, short story short, he'd interview return missionaries, talk about their missions, lessons they learned, stuff like that, helping younger generations to prepare for their missions.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the questions he asked, I kind of thought of an answer afterwards, but it's something I do always like to talk about with the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of, this is the irony of it all, but with my mission president, I had my final interview with him And I looked at him and I'm like, President, how do I make sure I'm not that guy who always brings up his mission? This is the irony of it, because here I am talking about it, but it's a huge lesson. Like this is there's like one of three things that I always talk about with my mission. Other than that, everything else I kind of hold very sacred and near and dear to my heart. Don't share it too often. But anyways, so I turned to him and I'm like, President, how do I make sure I'm not that guy who gets up in sacrament or every conversation he has talks about his mission? And he's like, well, he looks at me and he's like, you have to always be self-evaluating. And honestly, I'm saying this because I think I'm in a stage right now that I need this answer more than anyone listening or you. But he says, you always need to be self-evaluating. He's like, that's why we always encourage you to get home from your missions. You're 21 years old by the time you get home, to go home and start looking for an eternal companion. Look for a spouse, look for a wife.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're stuck constantly being the best uncle. It's kind of the way he put it. He's like, if you are, it's like if you never get married, you can it only takes a few short years to figure out how to become the best uncle. And you don't really become the best great uncle because, at that point, you don't really. Sometimes I have a decent relationship with a couple of my great aunts and uncles, but at the same time, that's it. He's like, so when you go home, you have to figure out, get married and figure out how to become the best spouse. By the time you figure out how to become the best spouse, then it's time to figure out how to become a father. And then you have to figure out how to become the best spouse and the best father at the same time. And then once you figure out how to become the best father, by that time, it's time for you to figure out how to be the best grandpa. And so he's like, you're constantly progressing in life, and that's like the same thing. And so I was talking to my mission president, and he's like, I served a mission 30, 40 years ago, and I hold those memories near and dear to my heart. But since then, I've become, he was a bishop for a few years. He was a stake president for a few years. He's like, now I'm a mission president. I've constantly strived to progress in life, spiritually, financially, physically, maritally, I guess, if that's a word, but, in his marriage. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the takeaway. That's kind of my thoughts right now.
Dude, I love that. Valuation. I'm with that. That's been on my mind too the last little bit. Some things that have happened in my personal life over the past year, and I've been in mega self-reflection mode. Because you can't, when things come up in your life, it's so easy to just deflect. I feel like there's a almost like an epidemic of people just deflecting right now. And there's actually disorders that are centered around people not taking accountability for their own actions. But there's a real, not saying everyone's in that boat, but like there is a real power in being able to look deep into yourself and say, where am I at in my life right now? And get really real and raw. Like, who am I right now? Where am I wanting to be? Where am I trying? Where am I at now versus where I want to be? And just getting real like that. And not just, it's not about whether or not what other people did to you or if not done to you. It's you can only take accountability for what you've done to you. So, yep. I love that.
Word.
Got wise stake president, man.
Mission president, yep.
Well, appreciate you coming on, dude. Always. We'll always reprise this over and over and over again. The homie, bro.